Have you ever prayed with everything inside you and heard absolutely nothing back? No sign, no answer, just silence. You ask God for help, but the heavens feel closed. And then a terrifying thought creeps in. What if God isn't listening? But listen to this. My God, why have you forsaken me? Those aren't the words of someone who lost faith. Those are the words of someone in the middle of faith, but experiencing silence. And here's what might shock you. Those words were spoken by Jesus on the cross. So what if God's silence is not rejection, but something deeper? Stay with me, because what you're about to discover could completely change how you see your hardest seasons. Let's be honest. Faith feels easy when life makes sense, when prayers are answered, when doors are open, when blessings are obvious. But everything changes when life falls apart, when the diagnosis comes, when the relationship ends, when anxiety creeps in at night. And in those moments, you don't pray less, you pray more. You cry harder. You seek God more desperately. But instead of clarity, you feel silence. And the question starts to flood in. Did God forget me? Is he punishing me? Why isn't he answering? You're not alone. King David prayed this exact cry. How long, Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? That's not doubt, that's desperation inside faith. And here's another passage that takes it even further. I cry to you for help, but you do not answer. That's Job, someone described as faithful, yet still experiencing silence. Which means this: feeling like God is silent is not a sign that you're failing. It's a place many faithful people have stood. But here's where things get interesting. The Bible doesn't just show us people experiencing silence. It shows us what's happening inside those moments. Because almost every time someone says, God, where are you? There's something deeper going on. Sometimes it's not that God is absent. It's that God is working in ways we cannot yet see. The Bible even shows a pattern. People cry out in confusion, but later realize God was present all along. And here's the key shift. Faith was never meant to depend on constant emotional confirmation. Because if faith only works when we feel God, what happens when we don't? This is where Scripture gives us a powerful clue. Even in the middle of silence, the writers keep praying. They don't walk away, they lean in. Which reveals a powerful truth. Silence is not the absence of God. It's often an invitation to deeper faith. Let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Job loses everything and hears nothing from God for a long time. David cries, "How long?" with no immediate answer. The prophet Habakkuk cries out, "How long, Lord, must I call for help? But you do not listen." Entire books of the Bible are built around this tension. And then there's one of the most powerful examples, Psalm 22. It starts with, my God, why have you forsaken me?" But something incredible happens as the chapter continues. The same person who feels abandoned starts remembering God's faithfulness. And slowly, the tone begins to shift. From despair to trust. From silence to confidence. And this is the same psalm Jesus quotes on the cross, which means even in the darkest moment in history, God was still fulfilling a greater purpose. And here's the mind-blowing part. What looked like silence was actually the setup for the resurrection. Here's the turning point most people miss. God's silence doesn't destroy faith, it refines it. Because faith that depends only on feelings is fragile, but faith that survives silence becomes unshakable. This is why some of the strongest believers have gone through seasons where God felt distant. Not because God left, but because their faith was being deepened. And the Bible shows us something else. Some prayers don't resolve immediately. Psalm 88 ends in darkness with no clear answer. And yet, it's still in the Bible, which means this: God doesn't reject you for feeling silence. He invites you to keep speaking, even in it. Because real faith says, I don't understand, I don't feel you, but I'm still here. And over time, something changes. You stop chasing feelings and start trusting truth. You stop needing constant reassurance and start walking in confidence. And one day, you look back and realize God was never absent. He was shaping you, strengthening you, preparing you. The silence that once felt like abandonment was actually transformation. If you're in a season where God feels silent, remember this: you are not alone. You are walking the same path as David, as Job, as the prophets, and even Jesus. But here's the question: what if this silence isn't where your faith is dying, but where it's being built? Because sometimes God does his deepest work in the quietest seasons. So don't stop praying. Don't stop seeking. And don't let silence convince you that God is gone. Because even when you cannot hear him, he's still there, working, moving, transforming. And one day, you'll see that the silence you feared the most was the moment your faith grew the strongest. If this spoke to you, comment below, faith through the silence. And let this be your reminder: God is never silent without a purpose. Before you click off, this is important. If you're in a season where God feels silent, don't stop here, because silence and exhaustion often go hand in hand. I want you to watch this next video where I'll walk you through how even Elijah, after one of the greatest miracles in the Bible, ended up saying, I've had enough, and more importantly, how God met him in that moment. It's the perfect next step if you're feeling spiritually drained, emotionally exhausted, or wondering why your strength is gone. Click the video on your screen right now, because sometimes God doesn't just speak in the silence. He meets you in the recovery after it. I'm glad you're here.